Today on Wobblycogs Workshop we build Wobblycogs Workshop. After nearly a year of delays getting various permissions and waiting for the builders to finish previous projects, it's finally time to break ground. As you can see, in the intervening time I tidied up the site a bit and got my scaffolding out of the way. The huge pile of wood from the demolition has been turned into firewood, and under the black plastic sheet are nearly 1,000 reclaimed bricks. Work started on a rainy Thursday morning when one guy turned up to dig foundations that would support a skyscraper. He started by digging along the garden side and then moved on to the patio side. Rather than go and get a break, we broke through the patio by hitting it with a digger. I have a newfound respect for diggers. Friday saw the completion of the digging of the foundation. The foundations on the patio side ended up being about 50% thicker than needed due to a bit of confusion over where they were supposed to be. With the foundations dug, they wasted no time getting the first lot of concrete pumped in. Pumping concrete was one of the more challenging parts of this build. Access to the back of the house is via a narrow lane. They could just about get the lorry down the lane, but not up the drive, which meant the concrete pump was near its limit. The first pump was 15 cubic metres, which was also right at the limit of what the truck could do. To be fair, we could probably have done with a couple of cubic metres more, but instead we opted for an extra course of bricks below ground level, which isn't an issue considering how deep the foundations are. The huge pile of soil from the foundations was getting in the way, so a morning was spent getting rid of it. In an effort to stop the site turning into a mud bath, they then compacted the soil with a digger. It still turned into a mud bath, and now I have a garden that doesn't drain when it rains. Oh well. Now I have foundations, it was time to start laying some bricks and blocks. The bricklayer we use is brilliant. He's a true master of his craft, and it's an absolute pleasure to watch him work. The next day we had a visit from the building inspector, who insisted on some additional foundations near the old part of the house. This meant digging down at least 2 metres, so we needed to get the digger up and over the newly built wall into what would be the new workshop. After a bit of head scratching, they used a tunnel type 1 to bridge the gap. A clever solution, I thought. Normally I'd have a complaint about the building inspector at this point, but he inadvertently gave me a larger workshop. In a moment of stupidity we decided to keep the old chimney breast in the workshop, which is why we have the boot room. When the guys dug down to add the additional foundations though, it was clear the chimney breast wasn't resting on anything and realistically had to come down. On the upside though, it meant we could put a much thinner wall back up in its place, adding an extra couple of square metres to the workshop. There was a slight additional cost to this, but it was peanuts compared to the rest of the build, and I'm really glad we did it. To save a bit of money we do all the plumbing and electrical work in the house, which meant it was time for me to get my hands dirty again. At ground level, the walls in this house are a bit over 600mm thick and solid masonry, so it was time to get the big guns out. I needed to drill 4 holes for 15mm pipes, 2 for heating and 2 for water. I followed that up by adding some conduit for pulling in cables at a later date. We had another round of concrete pumping to fill in the new internal foundations, and then the guys put up the shuttering so the floor slab could be pumped. The floor slab's 150mm double reinforced concrete, so perfect for a workshop. Slightly unusually, it rests on the inner leaf of the workshop wall. This is because we couldn't guarantee the ground the slab would normally rest on was undisturbed. The next big job was to pump the concrete in for the floor slab. The guys really earned every penny of their paycheck this day. Starting at about 6:30 they cleared out the water that pooled in the damp-proof membrane, and then they helped bring in the pipe work for the pump. Keep in mind that each section of that pipe weighs about 35 kilos. When pumping started, they all jumped into the concrete and started distributing it about. The pump was at full reach, so they had to shovel it by hand into the boot room area. I felt sorry for the lad that had forgotten his boots. I gave him some duct tape though, and he taped a couple of plastic bags to his feet. When the concrete was in, they took a scaffolding board and knocked down the larger bits of aggregate. This was followed by a first pass floating with a ball float, followed by a long time spent going over it by hand. Normally you'd pour a screed over the top of a slab, but we didn't have enough vertical height for that, so we went with the trowel concrete finish instead. I didn't shoot any more video from here on as I didn't want to get in the way of the guys. Over the next few days though, the walls went up and my large pile of reclaimed bricks disappeared at a startling rate. I ended up cleaning up another few hundred. It didn't take long for it to start feeling like a real room, and the roof timbers going in made a real change. I couldn't believe that one old guy with a circular saw put that whole roof in by himself in a day. I must also apologise to our neighbours for causing no end of traffic jams. With the roof timbers in, it was time to get the roof deck on. This also meant they could finish off the walls. One of the many downsides of living in a listed building is that you have to meet certain arbitrary design requirements. In our case, it meant building a parapet wall to hide the flat roof. This is all well and good, but they were pig to seal properly and a long-term weak point. A case of form over function. Let's just say the first go at installing the flat roof didn't go very well. Our builder subcontracted the job and sadly they turned out to be muppets. The chipboard top deck got a bit wet, so they dried it with a blow lamp. That of course put them seriously behind, and rather than cover it up with the tarp and come back the next day, they opted to press on. As you can see, they haven't long started laying matting and it's already going dark. Naturally they didn't bring any lights with them, and watching them scrabble around in the dark would have been funny if it was happening in somebody else's house. Now that we had a roof of sorts, it was fixed later. They moved on to rendering and plastering. There was a lot of plastering to do, and that alone probably took 3 weeks. Before long though, it was all done and the outside got a lick of paint. After seeing the demolition video, someone asked me why I didn't attempt the build myself. I'd have loved to have tried it, but it was well outside my previous experience, and having seen the build done by professionals, I'm glad I didn't try. All told, the build took about 5 months, and I'd estimate probably getting on for 5 man-years of effort. Being a tinkerer, I'm pretty used to living in a house that's half finished, but I must say it's nice to have a house back. I hope you enjoyed watching the build process. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and I'll see you on the next edition. Bye.